whispering in the trees. It's two cities and they're only...
I never thought this was going anywhere, but do you know what they talked about? I mean, what was the environment? What was the atmosphere in the meeting? Was it cordial? Was it heated? Do you know?
Well, I don't have any insider information, but from what I've read, and I've read everything I could over this, there were certainly some very heated moments, some very anxious moments. But what really happened was after the first couple of public meetings, there was never even really a full subcommittee meeting. There would be a couple of Republicans, a couple of Democrats meet, and then maybe down the hall a couple other Republicans, a couple other Democrats. And to me, that was the most troubling part of this entire process. When the super committee was created last July as part of the vote to raise the debt limit, what that vast majority of the U.S. Congress said is, let's do it in secret. Let's let this committee go out there behind closed doors and cut these deals. And I think that's a very scary precedent. It's un-American to begin with, but it's a very scary precedent as far as tax policy. And ironically, even during the subcommittee hearings, before it all broke down, there was already discussions that in Congress, maybe this is the way we ought to always do it.
Oh, prior to your call, I was presenting my opinion on. I got cornered last night by 4 Democrats, and they were just after me. They got me alone. They pounded away. And what I had to tell them was I wondered how quickly their memory lapsed on them. They didn't seem to remember, and maybe I'm wrong. You can straighten me out if I am, that the Republicans and the Tea Party received a mandate in the most recent election to cut spending and get government under control. And it was clear. It was a clear mandate. They won all the seats that really they could win, really, with a few exceptions. I don't understand what President Obama and the Democrats don't understand about the mandate. People want a smaller government, and they want this spending under control. Am I wrong about this?
No, you're right, but the process, I would argue, wasn't really a mandate. It was a mandate, yes, in the House of Representatives, but not in the Senate. Just yesterday morning, I was being interviewed by Lakeshore NPR, and I laid out my $7.6 trillion plan to roll back government, and the interviewer asked the very logical question, well, wait a minute, if this committee can't agree on $1.2 trillion in cuts, how would they ever reach agreement on $7.6 trillion? That's a fair question, and my answer is this Congress never would. The only way we're going to get the rollbacks we need is to have an overwhelmingly conservative, and notice I didn't say Republican, I hope it's Republican, but more importantly, conservative United States House, United States Senate, and have a conservative in the White House. You know, all this call of let's have bipartisanship, I don't remember that during the Obamacare discussions. Not a single Republican in the House or the Senate voted for the biggest tax increase in American history with Obamacare. It was shoved through. That's what's going to happen for us to have the kind of rollbacks that you and I would like to see. It's going to take overwhelming numbers of conservatives who say, well,
have not compromised with this administration. I don't like the direction it's going. I don't want to make any deals. I pretty much want it to come to a halt and see if we can't get somebody in Washington, D.C. that can turn this thing around before it gets out of control. And we're not even, I mean, we haven't even gotten to the point really where we could argue or discuss what Obamacare is going to really add to this tremendous debt that we're already in.
And it's going to be enormous, absolutely enormous. And you're right. You know, you mentioned that last night you were getting beaten up by 4 Democrats, and the thought that went through my head was, welcome to my world. But aside from that, you know, I know the TV commercials will be playing this coming spring because I say this in every speech I give, and it'll show up in one of those grainy, black and white, ugly, negative TV commercials where you hear me saying this: we do not need bipartisanship. It is bipartisanship that has taken us to the brink of bankruptcy. We don't need bipartisanship. We simply need the principle that says we don't spend more than we take in. And I don't see any Democrat who's willing to agree with that. They think we can just keep spending on till tomorrow. And, you know, I've been carrying in my pocket, in fact, I have it right now, what looks like a piece of monopoly money or a little funny money.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of pinkish color and green and white, and yet it's real currency. It is a Federal Reserve note from the Federal Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. It was issued in 2008, and the face value on the note is are you ready? $100 trillion. It is worth about $5.60 in U.S. currency. This is the product of trying to spend yourself to prosperity.
Yeah, I hope we don't get to that point, but I see a lot of scary things going on, not only in the United States and Washington D.C., but also what's happening in Europe is certainly going to, at some point, if they don't get that under control, it's going to affect us. And in your great wisdom, how will that affect us if things get worse in Europe? Say, Greece can't get straightened out, Spain defaults, Ireland's got problems. How will that affect us here?
Well, there is a whole series of, to use the word of a couple of years ago, toxic assets that are spread through the banks of Europe that do spread over on this side of the pond as well. If, in fact, Greece goes down and Spain goes down, the so-called pig nations, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, if those four continue to languish and people finally say we're not bailing them out, there is going to be an effect, and it's going to continue to slow down the recovery in this country without question. You know, I think it's virtually inevitable that Greece and Italy will go down. They have reached the point, Greece especially at this point, where nations like Finland are saying, no, you know, we're part of the EU, but we're not going to cover this, and they want to cut their own deal. If they're going to be providing any kind of assistance, they want a special deal, and in that you start to see the European Union starting to weaken a bit. The common joke right now in the world of finance is, what's the difference between Greece and the United States? And the answer is about 16 months. Now, the truth is, we are in a different situation because Greece doesn't have its own currency anymore, but they're basically asking, the Greeks are asking the rest of the European Union to start devaluing the euro, and that ultimately is what's going to happen in this country if we can't pay off our debt. This is a real crisis. It's a real issue. No nation in the history of the world has ever spent its way to prosperity. They do it by inflating currency to pay off a debt, and I fear that is what's in our future.
And they also set themselves up for this with something less than honest accounting information that they passed in to get some money originally. Before I let you go, you mentioned you believe the Democrats in Indianapolis here at our state level will walk out again in the spring. Do you see that, or do you foresee that coming down the road?
Well, former Speaker Pat Bauer has already suggested that it might be a possibility. Just as in the super committee, the lines were drawn between Republicans who say we don't raise taxes and Democrats who said we don't cut social benefits. In the Indiana House right now, it's Republicans saying we want right to work and the Democrats saying absolutely not. I see it as a very strong likelihood. You know, the Democrats owe great allegiance to the unions. I mean, I don't fault them for that. That is their natural constituency. And this is all or nothing for them. And the Democrats have to wonder, if we walk out, what's our chance of getting reelected? On the other hand, if they don't walk out, what's the chance that the Democrats are going to be really strong to support them in 2012? So I think they're in between a rock and a hard place. I think a lot of the individual members, the Democrats don't want to do it, but I think there's going to be tremendous pressure from their Democrat leadership to do that very thing.
He is the Indiana State Treasurer, Richard Mourdock, and calling from Indianapolis. Any closing thoughts, Richard?
Well, I would just encourage people, as always, to check out our campaign running for the U.S. Senate. Our numbers, polling numbers look great. Please go to richardmourdock.com, all one word, richardmourdock.com.
And I understand you'll be up here December 13th at the Lighthouse out in Cedar Lake. Very nice place. I hope to catch you out there if I can.
We'll look forward to it and be glad to squeeze in another interview there if you'd like.
Absolutely. Thanks. He's Richard Mourdock, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Good talking with you.
Thanks for joining us on the Region Underground. Richard Mourdock is a candidate for Lugar's seat. Pretty smart guy. It's going to be interesting.